Now you might have clicked this video thinking I was going to mention that Roman roads aren't actually straight, or the groma wasn't used to keep them in a straight line, or perhaps that they didn't bury themselves 5 foot in the ground with layer upon layer, or perhaps the ditches either side weren't actually for drainage. They're all myths, but none of them compare to today's monster. Okay, so let's get straight into this. Every time I make a video about a Roman road, whatever the nature or the specifics of that video, we seem to be plagued with comments of a particular nature. Now the comments all tend to highlight the fact that, well, the Romans didn't build roads here as such. They literally just built on top of pre-existing trackways from Iron Age, Bronze Age or Neolithic. In fact, this has even appeared on a popular TV show.
Who invented straight roads? Alan.
The Romans.
Oh.
Which has only gone to highlight this fallacy even more.
They rebuilt a lot of straight roads that were already there.
It doesn't stop there. Try and research this notion and back it up with some substance. Take for example this road here in southern Britain that heads from Silchester down to Dorchester. By and large, it's dead straight for miles. Could this really have been an ancient trackway just built upon by the Romans? Welcome to the story of the greatest Roman road myth. It sounds dramatic, but this has bugged me for a very long time. Okay, full disclosure, this isn't a hill I'm looking to die on. I really don't mind if the early Britons, the Neolithic, the Bronze Age, Iron Age people did indeed build straight roads. It'd be great to hear. And the Romans did in fact just come and pile on their roads on top. Let's use this video to research as we go. There is one other thing I want to show you on today's journey. Have a look at this. Now, as we travel on today's journey, well, let's have a look at a Roman road here in Britain. This is what's now referred to, and probably has been referred to since the Saxon times, as the Ackling Dyke. This is a Roman road, I think Route 4, that went between Silchester all the way down to Dorchester. And look at the significance of this agger. Hugely built up, probably repaired significantly over decades and centuries, I'm sure 400 years of its use, because this was one of the earliest Roman roads in Britain. I think almost within a year of the invasion this was complete. And well, onwards to try and debunk or not this myth that this was just built on top of. This was a Iron Age or earlier Bronze Age, Neolithic trackway that was just built on top of. Who knows? Let's get researching. So here is the problem. It's not just in the comments, and you lot comment with all kinds of theories that I truly love, but when you start to actually research this, when you type "were Roman roads built on ancient trackways," you get a few assertions. AI suggests that we should go straight to Wikipedia with two very bold statements. So let's have a look at those statements and maybe the sources for them. It looks like it's a dead link. And then we have pages like Rural Historia, and they post pictures of this Ackling Dyke, for example, and of course they're littered with comments of people telling them that actually, well, it was the ancients and the Neolithic that built roads just like this, because I saw it on QI. And of course they themselves have posted pictures making this claim that Roman roads were built on top of Neolithic trackways. The implication of that is quite significant. So a quick catch up, AD 43, and we have a Roman invasion of Britain. Not the first one, but nevertheless the first successful one. And now we have Roman rule in Britain, and we need to make a beeline to resources, to towns, cities, you name it. So we have, within the first 50 to 75 years, a set of Roman roads, perhaps 10,000 miles in their entirety. Very quick period of time, a very quick period of change. And for additional context, these routes were crucial to the movement of troops and supplies and safe passage for officials, you name it. So they were pretty decent in their quality. It doesn't take you travelling in any direction today to stumble across one 2,000 years on. That's some top quality engineering. Okay, so now you know what I'm on about. Let's get back to the myth. Of course, the Roman road, which isn't on this pathway, but it's just through there in the trees, there's a bit of a, what looks like an embankment. Well, that is our Ackling Dyke, or Roman road, Margery route number 4. Okay, so I did a bit of searching. I emailed a few people, a few friends, I did a few social media posts. Then I was reminded of a book that I'd recently read. In fact, this book. Footmarks by Jim Leary. So let's skip to page 162 and we have discussion on Sharpstone near Shrewsbury in Shropshire. 2009, an archaeological dig is taking place for the extension of a quarry. The dig uncovers what is described as an Iron Age road. So a whole bunch of compacted pebbles was found in a cambered shape, almost like a Roman road you could say, but Iron Age. And here's the key to this dig. Well, this dig discovered that it actually had a Roman road on top of it. It seemed that the Romans had literally come along and pretty much built on top of the Iron Age route. Not only that, but the Iron Age surface itself seemed to be built on top of some brushwood, which perhaps indicated the road was a lot older. So this is good. This is an exact example of the thing that I'm actually trying to debunk. So we could do with more examples to back up this hypothesis, this theory. In the meantime, let's consider the hill fort in this discussion, or at least, very least, the pre-Roman Iron Age town here in Britain. Now, we always attribute the street and layout to Romans, but we should possibly consider that Silchester, Caliva Atrebatum, already had this to a degree before the Romans arrived formally. So that is quite a thing, but then we know that the Atrebates, the tribe from that area, well, they were well versed in the ways of the Romans, and maybe that idea came from the Romans themselves, but we do need to consider the hill fort itself. So these are the outer banks and ditches of Danebury Hill Fort here in northwest Hampshire. Now, by the time the Romans arrived, late Iron Age, well, this was well out of use, so there is no significant influence on its design and construction, certainly on the inside, roads and streets, etc., from the Romans. However, like Silchester, we do have some structure. Come and take a look at this. Okay, so here in this Iron Age hill fort, we don't have a laid out grid system as such, but we do have a number of streets all laid out in a relatively sensible way, and they've been lined with dwellings all along them. So, fantastic, we have a road and we have some structure. But this is the internal workings of a town or a settlement. It's not really what we're after today. It just proves that the Iron Age tribes could build streets, and maybe with some structure. Okay, so we best go check the inbox. Okay, so the inbox so far has been quite useful. It suggested a number of people to contact about this subject, so I'll do that in the meantime. However, one particular person who shall remain nameless for the time being has suggested something a little bit disappointing about Sharpstone. It goes as follows. Sharpstone definitely caught the attention of the press. Baystone Hill has a rich Iron Age heritage, hill fort and nearby settlement, which is Romanised, and the route of Watling Street passes nearby. For me, there is a difference between a road and stones thrown over wet ground to level it and allow for passage. It is nothing like a formal engineered route needed for a road. Okay, so this is a bit of a problem because with Sharpstone, I thought we had a cast iron example of what everybody proclaims happened, that Roman roads were just built on top of pre-existing trackways. They just upgraded them. But it turns out we're probably back to the drawing board on example number 1. Okay, so before we get to the juicy bits, let's appreciate that we're talking about vast eras of time here. The Romans were the exception, of course, but the Iron Age as a whole, maybe 400 to 800 years of developments from hill forts to farmsteads, to imply there was a known format and absolute technique to construct a road sounds wrong. Considering something like the Ridgeway would perhaps be a better start for us, connecting numerous hill forts along its trade route, and to the best of my knowledge, no formal agger or construction technique, just multiple lines across the high ground. And as we step back in time further, we do see some other techniques used. We see holloways and we see more signs of cobbles and brushwood reinforcing damp areas, and of course step back another era, perhaps into the Neolithic, when we see some wooden walkways across the Avalon marshes. But in any real sense, we don't see any formal metalling or formal joined up significant road network with straight lines. So my inbox has pinged, and thankfully it is a message from one of the most respected authorities on Roman roads in this country, Joseph Lewis, and he starts in his email. Paul, you absolute legendary filmmaker, it's such an honour to receive the email from the prestigious filmmaker that is your... Okay, he didn't type that. Maybe he hasn't seen our films just yet. Paul, unfortunately the evidence is quite scarce. As you mentioned, Sharpstone is probably the best, most definitive answer in the sense of a metalled road. You might find the following useful. Dr. Lewis pointed out a paper called Dere Street from Ridgeway to Motorway, and he wanted me to flip to page 28. Okay, so we open with how well connected societies were in this era of focus, late Iron Age 50 BC to 43 AD. A number of enclosures and settlements grew up along this route because of its effectiveness. Networks of local and regional tracks with flanking ditches extended between settlements. Okay, so this is great. It feels like we have a really well formal laid out route, and as the paper goes on to discuss, a good network. So we read on. A short distance to the south, Salgarth Farm, field 213 to 215, suggests that the substantial routeway with Middle Iron Age origins continued to be in use and maintained up to a point that Dere Street was constructed directly on top of it. At last, we now have the evidence we need. Here at last, on a small section of Dere Street, we do have evidence of an Iron Age routeway being used as a Roman road by the Romans. This evidence appears to stand up better than the Sharpstone example. Over the course of this journey, this attempt to try and understand Roman roads better, attempt to try and debunk the myth that Roman roads were simply built on top of pre-existing trackways, I've tried to enter this with an open mind. Did this, the Ackling Dyke, one of the earliest Roman roads in Britain, really just sit on top of an already built pre-existing trackway from the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, the Neolithic Age? And I don't think I've found a huge amount of evidence. Joseph Lewis has given me a great insight into some examples. A really good one in southern France, or what is now southern France, a route between Bordeaux and Narbo. Here in Britain, though, I would say the research is inconclusive. We do have one good example, at least Dere Street, but I don't think we have too much else. The Sharpstone example doesn't really stand up to as much scrutiny as we like. But for the time being, I think routes like this, the Ackling Dyke, were purely Roman. Yes, they followed a broad route and a direction from settlement to settlement, but did they build on top of pre-existing trackways from the Neolithic, the Bronze Age, Iron Age? I think I can safely say at this point I'm not very convinced by that, so let's call this potentially debunked. And if you like Roman roads, we're going to love the playlist that we've got. We've got loads of videos about Roman roads all across Britain in various guises. Thanks for watching. I've been Paul.